The wind rattled against my office windows the morning everything changed. I still remember the vibration of my phone. Persistent, sharp, almost urgent. I had just stepped into my new role as CEO 3 months prior. 36 years old, the youngest in the company's history. You'd think the call would be congratulations or pride. It wasn't. My mother's voice came through ice cold and direct. "Kate, you're coming to dinner tonight. Your father and I need to discuss something important." Not asking. Ordering. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Not fear, but the memory of every time they summoned me like a soldier rather than a daughter. That evening, when I arrived at their home, my childhood home, my brother Jason was already sitting at the dining table, smirking like someone who'd just won a prize. He wore a designer watch I knew he couldn't afford, and shoes I'd seen him admire online but never buy. "Ah, she's here," my father said without looking up from a stack of papers. Finally. No hug, no greeting, nothing. Mom slid a thick envelope toward me. "Open it." Inside were mortgage documents, numbers staring back at me like flashing warning signs. $1.2 million purchase, $8,400 monthly payments, 30-year term. My pulse spiked. "What is this?" I asked slowly. Mom folded her hands elegantly, as if she were giving a speech rather than demanding something unthinkable. "We bought Jason a house, a stunning one, gorgeous finishes, 4 bedrooms, a pool, the works." Jason grinned wider. "And?" I asked. "And," she continued, "now it's your turn to contribute. You have that fancy CEO job. You earn more than all of us combined. It's time to help your family." There it was. Entitlement disguised as tradition. Jason leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Come on, Katie," he said, his tone dripping with familiarity he no longer had the right to use. "You don't even have kids or a husband. What else are you spending your money on?" Something in me cracked, not loudly, not visibly, but like a hairline fracture that would only deepen. I set the papers down. "No," I said simply. Silence. Not the awkward kind, the dangerous kind. My father's jaw tightened. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not paying my brother's mortgage. I'm not responsible for choices I didn't make." Mom's eyes hardened into steel. "Kate," she said sharply, "Jason deserves support. He's had a difficult life." I almost laughed. Difficult? Jason hadn't worked a full year in his life. He bounced from job to job, hobby to hobby, woman to woman, always cushioned by my parents' money, excuses, and denial. Meanwhile, I had worked hard, through scholarships, sleepless nights, internships no one wanted, and boardrooms full of men who underestimated me. My father pushed his chair back with a violent scrape. "We have sacrificed for this family," he snapped. "We paid for your education, fed you, clothed you." "Like every parent is supposed to," I interrupted. His eyes flared. Jason muttered under his breath, "Ungrateful." My mother leaned forward, voice low and venomous. "You will sign, because family loyalty is not optional." I stood. "No, that is my final answer." Mom's expression twisted, not sadness, not disappointment. Rage. Cold, calculated rage. "If you walk out that door without signing," she said, "you will regret it." I looked at Jason, relaxed, confident, certain I would cave as always. But I wasn't the same girl who'd once begged for their approval. I walked away. Their voices echoed behind me. "You think you're better than us. You owe us. You'll pay one way or another." I didn't answer, not then. But 3 weeks later, standing in front of a courthouse, clutching a lawsuit demanding $1 million, I realized something. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was war. And when the judge later leaned forward and asked me one question, one simple question, everything shifted. But that moment will come later. For now, all I knew was this. The people who gave me life had just declared themselves my enemies, and I wasn't going to let them win. The lawsuit wasn't just paper. It was an insult carved into legal language. When the envelope first arrived, stamped certified mail, I thought it was a tax document or maybe something related to the new division I was overseeing. But when I opened it, my breath caught. Plaintiffs: Thomas and Margaret Lawson. Defendant: Catherine Lawson. Amount demanded: $1 million for breach of expected familial financial duty. Expected. The word felt surgical, sharp, emotionless, and invasive. I sat at my kitchen island, rereading every line until the words blurred. They weren't just asking for money, they were accusing me of abandoning family responsibility, claiming I had verbally promised to support Jason's housing purchase, a promise I had never made. The absurdity should have made me laugh, but instead I just sat there, numb. The lawsuit felt less like legal action and more like betrayal, stamped with my parents' signatures. My phone buzzed. Jason. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, another buzz. My mother this time. Ignored. Then, a message delivered with smug precision. You brought this on yourself. You should have just helped your brother. Now everyone will know who you really are. Everyone. That was the part that stuck. Not the demand, not the entitlement, the threat of humiliation. My parents didn't just want money. They wanted to punish me for saying no. That night, I called the only attorney I trusted, my college friend Emily. She had become one of the most respected civil litigation lawyers in the state. She picked up on the second ring. Kate? Everything okay? No, I said quietly. I need your help. When I told her what happened, silence stretched across the call, heavy, tense. Kate, this isn't a lawsuit. This is coercion. They're trying to pressure you financially and socially, and unfortunately, it's becoming common. End quote. My stomach sank. So what do I do? You don't respond emotionally, she said firmly. You respond strategically. The next morning, I walked into her office. Emily looked over the documents again, eyebrows raised. They're basing their claim on implied obligation and alleged verbal agreements, she muttered. No contract, no written promise, nothing enforceable. So it's weak? Weak and reckless, she said. But that doesn't mean harmless. She slid the papers back toward me. They're counting on you to panic and settle. They think embarrassment is your Achilles heel. For a moment, it worked. Because embarrassment came fast. Within days, I noticed the whispers. At work, a board member asked casually, "Everything okay at home? Heard you're having family issues." At the gym, a woman I barely knew approached me with a sympathetic tone. "Your poor brother," she murmured. "Must be hard watching you live so comfortably while he struggles." I stared at her. Jason? Struggling? He'd never struggled a day in his life. He coasted while others worked, and somehow my parents turned that into a narrative of hardship. But the rumor that cut deepest came from my cousin Allison. She texted, "Why did you force your parents to take legal action? Just pay the mortgage. It's family. Just pay." Because apparently success meant servitude. By the end of the week, I had received 27 messages telling me how heartless I was, how selfish, how ungrateful. Some were subtle. Some were venomous. One from my aunt read, "Your mother cried for hours. She says you'd rather watch your brother lose everything than help. Money has changed you." Maybe money had changed me, but not in the way they meant. Money taught me boundaries. Money taught me independence. Money taught me that being the only responsible adult didn't mean I was required to clean up everyone else's chaos. On Friday evening, Jason finally got what he wanted, my attention. He cornered me in the parking garage beneath my office building, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar like he was rehearsing for a dramatic reveal. "Kate," he said, forcing a smile, "can we talk?" I walked past him. "No." He followed. "You're blowing this out of proportion. This didn't have to get legal." I stopped. "You filed the lawsuit, Jason." He shrugged. "Mom and Dad just want fairness. You make more than us. You should contribute." "Contribute," I repeated. "To your house. Not mine, not our parents, yours." His expression hardened. "You think you're better than us." "No," I said calmly. "I think I'm responsible for myself. That's all." His jaw twitched. Not in anger, but in realization. For the first time, he understood I wasn't bending. "Fine," he hissed. "Then the judge will make you." I held his gaze. "Jason, the judge is going to ask one question neither of you are ready to answer. His smirk faltered. What question? I walked away before answering. Because some answers deserve silence before impact. And the impact was coming. The court date was set faster than I expected. 4 weeks. 4 weeks to prepare for a legal battle against the people who were supposed to protect me. 4 weeks to watch the story spread like wildfire through family circles and old acquaintances. By the second week, the narrative had fully morphed. According to whispered conversations and group texts I wasn't supposed to see, I had refused to help my struggling brother. Promised years ago that I would support the family financially. Turned selfish after becoming CEO. None of it was true, but truth mattered less than perception. The worst part was who chose to believe it. My godmother, who once told me I was destined to do great things, called and said quietly, "Kate, sometimes success blinds us. Maybe helping would be the right thing." I didn't argue, I just thanked her and hung up. But the message echoed, "You owe them." That phrase had followed me my whole life, subtle, implied, unspoken, until now. Emily worked tirelessly, gathering documentation, compiling financial records, drafting our response. One evening, as she spread papers across her dining table, she looked up and asked, "Kate, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "When did your parents start treating you like an asset instead of their daughter?" The question stunned me, not because I didn't know the answer, but because no one had ever asked. After a moment, I exhaled. "When I was 14, I said. Jason quit soccer, karate, piano, everything. Nothing stuck, but I worked, I studied, I won competitions. My parents started saying, 'Kate will take care of us one day.'" Emily nodded slowly. That wasn't pride, that was expectation disguised as support. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to name it. The weekend before the hearing, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Claire, my father's younger sister, showed up at my condo unannounced. She stood outside my door with 2 coffees and a look that wasn't judgment, but worry. "Can I come in?" I almost said no, but something about her expression stopped me. Once inside, she didn't waste time. "Your mother is telling everyone you abandoned family duty," she said quietly. "But I know what's really happening." I studied her face, searching for motive. She continued, "Your parents spoiled Jason, everyone knows it. They held you to impossible standards and let him drift through life. Now they're panicking." "Panicking?" I repeated. "Yes," she said, folding her hands, "because you succeeded without needing them, and Jason didn't." That sentence sat heavy in the air. She took a breath. "They're afraid of being judged. So instead of admitting they enabled him, they're rewriting the story. And you, because you're strong, because you've always been strong, became the villain." For the first time since the lawsuit began, I felt tears sting my eyes. Not from hurt, though there was plenty, but from the relief of being understood. Before she left, Aunt Claire placed a folded piece of paper on my counter. "I don't know if this helps," she said, "but you should have it." After she walked out, I opened it. It was a handwritten note from my mother dated 5 years ago, written on the back of a birthday card. "Jason will have to learn to stand on his own soon. We may have made things too easy for him. But thank you, Kate, for always being the responsible one. We're proud of you, not because you'll support us, but because you built your life yourself." My breath hitched. There it was, proof they once acknowledged reality. Proof they once knew Jason wasn't owed anything. Emily's reaction was immediate when I showed her. "Kate, this is powerful. Not legally decisive, but emotionally devastating. It proves their memory of events changed conveniently, not factually." 3 nights before the hearing, I saw Jason again. He wasn't waiting in a parking garage this time. He showed up at my office lobby, pacing, jittery, eyes bloodshot. "Kate," he said, gripping my arm when I approached, "you need to settle." I pulled my arm free. "No." His voice cracked, part anger, part fear. "They're talking to reporters. They're telling people you're unstable, that the job changed you." His hands shook. "Please, if this goes to court, everything will come out." I stared at him. That's the point. For the first time, Jason didn't look entitled. He looked terrified. Of consequences. Of exposure. of finally facing the truth he'd avoided his entire life. I walked toward the elevators. "Behind me," he whispered, almost pleading. "The judge can't undo family." I turned back just long enough to respond. "No," I said, "but family can undo themselves." The elevator doors closed between us, and the countdown to the courtroom began. The morning of the hearing arrived colder than December had any right to be. The courthouse stood tall and indifferent, the kind of building built for judgment rather than comfort. As I walked toward the entrance, my heart thudded, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Inside, my parents and Jason were already seated at the plaintiff's table. Jason looked hollow, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders tense. My mother, however, looked poised. Perfect makeup, rigid posture, chin slightly raised. My father sat beside her, stiff as a board, jaw clenched. Their lawyer, a sharp-featured man named Alan Pierce, flipped through documents like he was preparing for a corporate negotiation, not a case against someone's daughter. Emily leaned in close. "You're calm," she whispered. "I'm tired," I replied. "There's a difference." When the judge entered, everyone rose. Judge Armitage, gray hair, steady voice, a presence that demanded honesty, took his seat and signaled for the proceedings to begin. Pierce spoke first. "Your Honor, this case is about family responsibility and promises made, promises relied upon. My clients provided for their daughter financially throughout her education. In return, she expressed clear intent to support the family when she became successful." The phrasing was deliberate, emotional, manipulative. My mother dabbed the corner of her eye with a tissue. Jason leaned forward, as if participating in a tragedy he'd auditioned for. Pierce continued, "Furthermore, her refusal to assist with the mortgage of her brother, a home purchased to keep him safe and stable, has resulted in emotional and financial hardship. Safety and stability. As if Jason were a newborn baby instead of a 3-year-old adult who still couldn't hold down a job." Finally, it was my parents' turn to testify. My mother painted herself as a heartbroken parent. She spoke of sacrifices, of raising 2 children with equal love, of being blindsided and devastated by Kate's cold rejection. My father claimed I had promised during multiple holiday dinners that I would take care of the family financially. They looked at me, not with love, not even with anger, with conviction, as if they truly believed their version. Then Jason testified. His voice shook, not from nerves, but from rehearsed fragility. "I'm not irresponsible," he said. "I just needed help getting started. She has everything. I have nothing." That was his narrative. Not choices. Not consequences. Just victimhood. When Pierce finished, Judge Armitage turned to Emily. "Defense?" Emily stood, calm and unhurried. "Your Honor, this case isn't about promises. It's about expectation. Unfounded, entitled expectation." Then she presented the evidence. We began with facts. Jason's employment record showing frequent job changes and multiple terminations. His spending habits, vacations, electronics, designer brands. Bank statements showing my parents' financial support of him for over a decade. Jason stared at the table, cheeks burning. Next came the handwritten note from my mother. Emily read it aloud. "We're proud of you, not because you'll support us, but because you built your life yourself." The courtroom shifted, not loudly, but perceptibly. My mother closed her eyes as if she could will the words away. Then Emily played a recording, the one from the garage confrontation. Jason's voice echoed through the courtroom. "Mom and Dad just want fairness. You make more than us. You should contribute." And then, "If you don't pay, the judge will make you." Pressure, coercion, intent. Not family care, leverage. Finally, Emily turned to me. "Kate, did you ever agree, verbally or in writing, to pay for your brother's mortgage?" "No." "Did you ever promise financial support of any kind?" "No." "Did you ever ask your parents to fund your education expecting repayment?" "No." "Did you ever request money from them after becoming financially independent?" "No." Silence followed. Thick, undeniable. Judge Armitage leaned forward, examining all 3 plaintiffs with a steady gaze. Then came the question, simple, pointed, impossible to dodge. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, if your son did not need financial support, if he were employed, stable, and responsible, would you expect your daughter to pay his mortgage anyway? My parents exchanged a look. Jason swallowed. The truth surfaced. Not legally, but morally. My mother finally whispered, "Yes." The courtroom felt colder than the winter air outside. Because with that one word, everything became clear. This wasn't about support. It was about control. And the judge knew it. He leaned back, expression unreadable. "I've heard enough," he said. The verdict was coming. And nothing, not blood, not history, not guilt, was going to stop it. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Even the air seemed heavier, dense with the weight of everything unsaid but deeply understood. Judge Armitage removed his glasses and set them down with deliberate care, the soft click echoing through the room. He looked at my parents first. "Mr. and Mrs. Lawson," he began, voice controlled but sharp, "this court does not exist to enforce entitlement, imagined promises, or unequal family expectations." My mother stiffened as if bracing for impact. The judge continued, "There is no legal basis for your claim. No agreement, no contract, no written promise. What you are demanding is not support. It is servitude disguised as obligation." Jason swallowed hard, his hand gripping the edge of the plaintiff table. Judge Armitage turned to him. "And you, Mr. Lawson, your financial instability is the result of long-term dependency behavior, not neglect by your sister." Jason blinked rapidly, stunned. The judge then shifted his gaze to me. "Miss Lawson," he said, voice softening just slightly, "you do not owe your family financial support simply because you achieved success." Relief washed through me, not triumphant, but grounding. A confirmation of something I had always known but had never heard spoken aloud. Judge Armitage lifted the stamped documents. "This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice." I exhaled, slow, steady, necessary. But he wasn't finished. He leaned forward. "Furthermore, due to the clear pattern of coercion, public defamation, and intentional misuse of the legal system, I am granting the defense counterclaim for legal fees." My mother's tissue crumpled in her hand. Jason's mouth fell open. My father's jaw locked. Judge Armitage signed the order. "The plaintiffs will pay Miss Lawson's legal expenses in the amount of $42,860. Payment due within 90 days. Gasps filled the courtroom. Not dramatic, but sharp enough to confirm the shift in power. Then, almost as an afterthought, but really it was the final strike, he added. "And any further attempt to harass, defame, or financially target the defendant will result in sanctions and possible criminal referral." Silence. Real silence. The kind that marks endings. With the hearing adjourned, people began filing out. Meanwhile, my parents remained frozen, like they didn't know whether to stand, argue, or crumble. Emily touched my arm. "You did it!" I nodded, but the victory felt strange, not sweet, not triumphant, more like finally stepping out of a storm I'd been walking in for years. As I gathered my things, I heard footsteps behind me. Kate. Jason. I turned slowly. His eyes were red, not from anger this time, but something closer to shock, maybe even fear. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said quietly. I held his gaze. "Yes, you did. You thought the court would force me to save you." His silence was confirmation. I continued, calmer than I felt. "You weren't asking for help, Jason. You were demanding it, and when I refused, you tried to punish me." He looked down, jaw trembling. "Our parents raised us differently," he muttered finally. "They expected things from you, and shielded me from everything." "That wasn't raising," I said softly. "That was enabling." "For a moment," he whispered, "I thought winning against you would solve everything." "And now?" I asked. He looked up, voice fragile. "Now, I think losing might be the only thing that forces me to grow up." I studied him. Really studied him. For the first time, he wasn't defending entitlement. He was confronting it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the closest thing to truth he had ever offered. Before I could respond, my mother approached. Her heels clicked sharply across the polished floor. "Kate," she said, voice trembling, not with sadness but indignation. "You embarrassed us. You humiliated your family." "No," I corrected gently. "I protected myself. You created the humiliation." Her eyes hardened. "You'll regret this. Family doesn't disappear." I met her stare without flinching. "No," I said softly, "but sometimes family forfeits the right to belong." I walked away before she could answer. Outside, the winter air stung my cheeks, but for the first time in months, I felt able to breathe fully, deep and unrestrained. My phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Claire. "Proud of you. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're protection." I smiled. Small, real. The courthouse behind me felt symbolic. Not just a building, but a boundary line drawn in stone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the responsible daughter, the fixer, the fallback, the safety net. I was simply Kate. And for now, finally, that was enough. Life didn't snap back to normal after the verdict, because normal no longer existed. Something fundamental had shifted, and once a fracture runs through the foundation of a relationship, it never truly disappears. At best, it becomes a scar. At worst, it becomes a boundary. The first days after court were strangely quiet. No calls, no messages, no accusations. Just silence. I didn't realize how much noise I had been living with. Expectations, guilt, pressure, until it vanished. One afternoon, about 10 days after the hearing, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found a small, padded envelope on my mat. No note, no handwriting except the printed shipping label. Inside was a key. A house key. Jason's. A message followed 30 minutes later. "I moved out. The bank will take the house soon. I just wanted you to know I'm not expecting anything anymore." Jason. Not angry. Not manipulative. Just honest. I stared at the message longer than I should have, heart wrestling between sadness and relief. Jason losing the house wasn't surprising. The mortgage payments were impossible without my parents funding him, but the acceptance was. It felt like the first adult action he had taken in years. A week later, Aunt Claire called. "Your parents are furious," she said without preamble, but also embarrassed. I let out a slow breath. "I'm not looking for revenge," I said. "I just needed space. And dignity." "That's what makes this harder for them," she replied gently. "You didn't fight to win. You fought to protect yourself. They can't frame that as selfishness, no matter how hard they try." There was a pause before she added, "For what it's worth, some people are beginning to see the truth." I didn't respond right away. Not because I doubted her, but because validation wasn't the point anymore. 3 weeks after the ruling, I went grocery shopping and ran into Mrs. Harris, my parents' longtime neighbor. She hesitated before approaching, fidgeting with her scarf. "Kate," she said softly, "I owe you an apology." She explained she had believed my mother's version, that I had abandoned family duties after becoming successful, but once the court documents became public record, people saw the reality. Jason's spending. My parents' entitlement. The absence of any promise. The pressure campaign. "I raised 2 boys myself," she whispered. "I know the difference between helping and being used." That conversation felt like closure. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just real. Jason reached out again a month after the lawsuit ended. This time, it wasn't a demand or an apology. It was a request. "Would you consider meeting for coffee? I just want to talk. Not about money. About us." I sat with that message for hours before answering. "Yes, but only if you understand something first. I won't be responsible for your choices. Not now, not ever." His reply came quickly. "I do. I need to learn how to be responsible without expecting rescue." For the first time, it felt like honesty, not performance. When we finally met at a quiet cafe downtown, Jason wasn't defensive. He wasn't angry. He wasn't rehearsed. He looked humbled. "Losing everything," he said quietly, "was the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me." He told me he had found a job. Nothing glamorous. Warehouse work. Early morning shifts. Physical labor. But he sounded proud in a way he never did, when bragging about things he hadn't earned. I didn't understand boundaries, he admitted. I thought family meant guaranteed support, but now I think family should want each other to stand, not carry each other forever. There was growth there. Not perfection. Not absolution. But growth. We talked for an hour. About childhood, expectations, mistakes, and the slow, painful process of relearning what family should mean. Before we left, he asked quietly, "Do you think things will ever feel normal again?" I gave him the only honest answer I had. No, but maybe they can feel healthier. He nodded, accepting it. As weeks turned into months, contact with my parents dwindled. They never apologized. They never acknowledged the harm they caused. But the silence became less hostile, more distant. A quiet acknowledgement that the relationship, as they wanted it, was over. One evening, months later, I stood on my balcony watching the city lights flicker against the night sky. I thought about everything that had happened, not just the lawsuit, or the courtroom, or the gossip, but the years leading up to it. And I understood something. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, it's self-respect. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's healing. Sometimes family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by boundaries. I didn't win because the judge dismissed the lawsuit. I won because I reclaimed my identity from expectations I never agreed to carry. As I closed the balcony door behind me, one final thought settled peacefully in my mind. I didn't lose my family. I simply stopped paying the emotional price they demanded and let the truth decide what remained. And what remained was freedom.